Hi, everybody. Charles Hoskinson here, broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. So, how y'all doing? It is September 26, 2020. It's been a very long year. Lots of stuff going on, a lot of people doing various things. I just got back from Wyoming. I literally drove down earlier today, and the whole state was cowled in fires. And so, while leaving Laramie and going down 287, it was like red dawn. The whole air was just filled with smoke and nastiness, and the sun was basically being filtered through. So it was pretty ugly. And unfortunately, these fires are not yet contained. So we wish everybody well up in Wyoming. It was a great event. Went to the hackathon, the Stampede Hackathon over at University of Wyoming. I also got to tour the Iohk lab that we have at the University of Wyoming and talk to Jim Caldwell and Cam, who's the department chair of computer science, and the dean and the president Lessig of the university. So it was just wonderful to spend some time with the academics there. Also had a chance to talk to Governor Gordon, governor of the state of Wyoming, and Mayor Cheyenne, and a lot of the politicos in the legislature, along with the usual suspects, Caitlin Long and so forth. It was nice to see Tim Draper. He attended in person, and it was also nice to see Brock Pierce. He was there as well in person. He's been having fun running around the state, and his campaign people were there. But he's always an entertaining guy to spend some time with and talk about a variety of issues. Presidential runs are hard affairs, and I better him than me to go through that. It's tough. Didn't have time for a haircut. I was scheduled for it, and unfortunately couldn't do that. As for the rest of the stuff, a lot of things to talk about. Many of you know that my dog just recently died. I have 4 dogs, but the smallest and oldest was named Bambi. And someone who was dying of cancer gave me the dog, and her dying wish was that I take care of the dog. And I said, okay. And it was a really interesting experience having that dog, because Bambi unfortunately suffered from epilepsy. It's the only dog I've ever had that. And so I had to give her medicine every day. And eventually it ended up being phenobarbital, which is a pretty powerful drug. But she just kept on living. And later in life, she developed mitral valve prolapse, which turned into mitral valve regurgitation. And unfortunately for tiny, old epileptic dogs, there's not much you can do there. And so she started developing congestive heart failure. And when it got to the point where every time she coughed, it was painful, and she was coughing constantly, and the Lasix stopped working, there was really nothing more that could be done. So I put her down. But damn, I love that dog. I really did. I didn't expect to love her as much as I did. She'd sleep on my chest, and every person who visited the farm, she'd run up to him and wag her tail and lick him. And you just don't get too many dogs like that. I remember years ago listening to a radio personality who actually wrote a book about his dog, and he said that why do people always ask why do dogs die so quickly? They say, well, if they live longer, then they'll outlive us, and then who takes care of them when we're gone? So in a sense, it is a blessing that they go before we do, so that you don't run into these situations of who takes care of these old dogs. So I wish you well, Bambi. It was tough. But outside of that, it's actually been a pretty good week. We've accomplished a lot. We've done a lot. Update on Bittrex. A huge amount of work went this week into the wallet. We went back and forth with their guys. They finally managed to get a working build with all the performance enhancements, and we're taking a look and seeing if that's good enough. So it's in Bittrex's hands. They're testing it. They're running transactions, and they have acceptance criteria. On our side, the benchmarks look good, and we'll see if their environment, they look good as well. We have done an enormous amount of stuff, including creating new APIs for them, a lot of micro benchmarking. We found tons of areas that were accidentally quadratic under large sets and of UTXO. We're able to clean that up. So that's one prong of the strategy. We're also at the same time giving them a script to do UTXO defragmentation. Next week, they'll have that. So if the performance improvements we've done don't work, or they're not good enough for them, then perhaps defragmenting the UTXO, getting a smaller UTXO set and segregating the wallets will solve their problem. We're also investigating using slightly different stuff in the software stack if for some reason the micro benchmarking doesn't work. But I'm very optimistic. There's no reason at this point, I think, for there to be an issue. Probably the issues at this point will be configuration or environmental, but it should be close to the end of the rainbow. It's been a very frustrating bug and problem because it's like an endless river. We keep improving things, but it doesn't ever seem to be what's necessary. And we say, okay, well, we'll just keep doing it. And we learned a lot along the way, and this benefits every single exchange, and this benefits every single user of ADA. So there's a definite commercial value and product value, but I understand how incredibly frustrating it can be if you're a user of Bittrex to have that wallet be down. And it was never anybody's intent, and we never thought it would take this long. And no other exchanges are having the issue. It's just this particular environment configuration were unique. The good news is we'll never be down this road again. We're almost completely green across the spectrum for all exchanges. Bittrex is the only major exception at the moment. And this software is materially not going to change dramatically in terms of how to list it, how to interface with it, and work with it. So when Gogan comes and Voltaire infrastructure comes and Voucher infrastructure comes, none of these things are going to be as dramatic as the Byron to Shelly transition. So that's the good news. It's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel that this is one of those last things we have to accomplish. But we'll work our way through it. In terms of the delivery of Gogan, we'll have a lot to say this month and next month at the product updates about it. I've always looked at Gogan as kind of like a three-phase delivery. So one side of it is transaction metadata and is starting to get to a point where you have non-monetary transactions. So basically you say, okay, I'm not just sending ADA to somebody, but now this transaction is carrying a payload with it, which has a non-ADA related utility. So for example, we this month finished all the metadata stuff, dragged it into the Cardano wallet and into the node. And now we're starting to use the metadata field for the credential verification program that we're doing in Georgia, things like Beefchain and other things that are related to identity and track and trace and so forth. So that's a permanent feature and utility that exists within Cardano, and it's a major milestone for where Gogan comes. The second thing is moving from a single asset to a multi-asset system, so people can issue their own tokens on Cardano. And that's got to be done in a phased way because there's many different types of tokens. There's security tokens, utility tokens, fungible tokens, not fungible tokens. And we have a very different way of doing it. And so we're building some commercial software for that called the Erc20 Converter. And basically this is going to be something the commercial team can use, and we'll share it with other commercial teams outside of the firm to help people basically migrate from Ethereum to Cardano. It's a process. There's an accounting side and a logic side to it. So great progress has been made there, and we have a beautiful standard for multi-asset, which we feel is significantly more competitive than ERC20 is, because ERC20 is a smart contract built on top of Ethereum, and it's very different from Ether. Whereas our way of doing things is we say, okay, when we go from single asset to a multi-asset ledger, your assets issued are actually treated the same way from an accounting perspective as ADA is. And so there's huge advantages to that when you talk about layer 2 infrastructure, optimization, cost reduction, and so forth. So we have a really cool way of doing that. And I think it's quite novel, and people who are issuers of tokens are going to get very excited about this. And we will have a wonderful presentation this week about a particular project that's migrating over from Ethereum to Cardano, and they're really excited to work with us. And I think you guys already know what that project is, but I'll wait for the announcement. It's just in a few days for the product update, and there will be many more to come, especially as that infrastructure turns on. And then the third category is the programmability, and there's really two approaches to take there. There's the full general purpose programming language for both on and off chain interactions, and that's Plutus. And then we have the DSL-driven approach, which is languages like Marlow, for example. And both of them are meant for specific people. So We'll have some things to say at the end of this month about Plutus and Marlow, and we'll have a lot more to say, especially about Marlow in October. The coming weeks and months, there's going to be a huge amount of Gogan rollout and discussion. So metadata is already here. We'll have some things to say about multi-assets soon. And the building of Marlow and Plutus is very deep in the weeds. It's 4 years in the making. And things are being pulled over gradually into Cardano. Stake pool operators are the first to know because they're the ones who upgrade the nodes fastest. And a lot of you guys with node 1.20 starting to see that there's a lot of Gogan related work that's starting to happen. And there's a great release cadence there. It's on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So we'll have a lot to say soon, but I'm not going to front run any announcements in this AMA. But overall, I'm very happy with where we sit, because especially when you're talking about the general purpose language, Plutus, it is functional, but there's another project we're subsidizing called Mune, which is exploring an imperative flavor of that, which means that it looks like JavaScript. So you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. You can have a functional Haskell-like language, and then you can have a more traditional language, and developers will have multiple paths to write smart contracts. But then they benefit from all the infrastructure we're constructing, the verification infrastructure, the testing tooling, the ability to do specifications, the inevitable formal verification toolkits that are going to be constructed for these contracts, as well as just the broader community of experts that live there. Marketing is another big area that I'm spending quite a bit of time these days on. We hired Lisa, and I'm going to make sure she gets introduced to the community at some point soon. Hopefully, maybe the product update at the end of this month. If not this month, certainly in the month of October. We also hired David Orr, a community member who makes phenomenal videos. And what I've assigned Lisa and David to do is first product marketing. So we're going to systematically walk our way through every component of Cardano, Ouroboros, Extended UTXO, Plutus, just kind of work our way through the whole thing. And in each and every one of them, we'll talk about where did it come from, why is it built correctly, and they get into the details of how does it work, why is it special, what makes it unique, and then finally we're going to do comparison marketing. I have 5 targets on the permissionless side and 2 targets on the permission side. The 5 targets on the permissionless side are Algorand, EOS, Tezos, F2, and Polkadot. I think that's a fair sampling of those aspiring to be in the 3rd generation class. And the bulk of the questions I get about, well, can you compare Ouroboros to what Tezos does or to what Algorand does? So those are the questions I keep getting. So let's go ahead and answer those things. So this is going to consume a big chunk of her time and our marketing efforts in the next 60 to 90 days. And I'm going to really crack the whip hard to make sure that we get lots of content out that handle those 3 categories. You know, where did it come from? Why is it credible? We've kind of told that story with the peer review formal methods, but there's more to say. The actual how does it work? We also have done this in a very technical way, but we need to do it in a slightly more user-friendly way, which is one of the reasons why David is here, amongst others. And then the 3rd category of comparison marketing that has to be done. Moving beyond the next 60 to 90 days, then begins campaign marketing, where we actually start talking about specific constituencies and stakeholders that ought to come into the Cardano ecosystem, because there's just so much natural synergy with what we're doing and what they're aspiring to do. We already, without doing any of that, have a lot of people who have come to us and asked us, we want to be part of Cardano, how do we do that? So it's a phenomenal product when you don't even have to sell it to sell it. You don't even have to market it to market it, but we can do better. And there's a lot of venues where we can get much more notoriety and much more visibility in. So we have some strategies internally, but I'm not going to announce them here about which stakeholders to prioritize and how we're going to roll out. The good news is that the foundation's already doing a good job with Merriam. The developer portal, for example, is a good step there. And there's a lot of very creative ideas that are flowing. And there's already a lot of community effort where they're really pushing hard, saying we want to market too. And so the existence of Voltaire is going to definitely help people out there. So it's going to be a bit more time to get that completely spooled up, because these people are just getting used to where we're at, and there's tons of questions asked, and there needs to be kind of an assembly line constructed with the scientists, the engineers, and the marketing people. But it is a very high priority, and because I'm micromanaging it, I'm not going to let them slip through. It's going to get done. one way or another. And we will get it done one way or another, because we've built an amazing product. We've built an amazing protocol and this amazing ecosystem with an amazing community. It makes absolutely no sense at all to me to undervalue marketing. We're ready for that now. And with Gogan turning on, Voucher already on, Shelly on, we need the users. We're going to absorb them quickly, and we're going to become a titan in 2021. So a lot of marketing is coming down the pipe. On the Voucher side, Fund 2 has opened up. I think over 2,000 people have signed up for IdeaScale and are actively commenting. There's very vibrant conversations that are occurring there, and a lot of back and forth, a lot of great ideas. And it's actually bringing some old people out of the woodwork who said, we'll come back later. They're actually waking up and they're coming on in. So that's really exciting to see the progress there. And that's the beginning. So it's entirely possible every time we do this, every generation of the fund, as we get more accessibility, that we will see 10,000 people, 12,000 people in IdeaScale talking every time a funding round comes in. And remember, these funding rounds come every 6 to 8 weeks, and then they're going to eventually become even faster, and then they'll be layered. So we also have been talking about bringing some more partners in. IdeaScale was the first partner. We were looking to concepts like sociocracy and holacracy and so forth. And we've been talking a lot about auditing, oversight, and basically assurance that when funds come in, there's track and trace of the behavior and the execution to verify that things were done correctly, much like a grant program would. So it's all an experiment, and it's evolving very rapidly. But Dor is a great product manager, and he's got a great team. And so I'm very happy to see how quickly things have come together for them, and they're going to keep pushing hard. And I have no doubt that they're going to have a really good time in the next 6 months, transitioning from a prototype to a fully working, beautiful governance stack that's based on best practices and principles that have come over the last 25, 30 years of the people who study these types of things. Okay, so that's the update side. Let's get to your questions, huh? Let's see what we got here. LOL at the bottom left of the screen. Yeah, it's really unfortunate we live in this day and age where I have to put a banner in my screen saying I'll never give away ADA. But this is the world we live in. YouTube doesn't care, and the social media doesn't care. They have built phenomenally advanced algorithms, automated and manual, that allow them to deplatform political speech that they don't like. So all this fact checking, all this stuff, okay, great. And if you say the wrong things, instantly deplatform. But if you're a criminal attempting to steal money from people, impersonating other people, hacking people's channels to do this, perfectly fine, no problem, nothing to see here. To an extent where they're being sued by Steve Wozniak, they're being sued by Ripple, still no problem at all. It keeps happening. They're just tone deaf. And then they say, oh, we can't solve it. You can deplatform speech you don't like, but you can't deplatform a pattern of behavior that any intelligent agent would easily be able to detect. Why? Because they just don't care. They just absolutely don't care. I'm 100% convinced of it. We have repeatedly, publicly and privately attempted in every way possible to get YouTube to take this seriously and to stop these scams. They don't care. So now I've gotten to a point where I actually have to put in my videos, I will never give away ADA. And I'll keep doing it if they keep making these videos. One light at the end of the tunnel is if people are trying to steal ADA, I guess we're doing a pretty good job making ADA great. People don't steal worthless things. So maybe that makes you feel a little bit better. Hi, Charles. Is Iohk related to the United Nations? The United Nations and our company, we've been donating money for certain hackathons and things, and we rub shoulders all the time because we do a lot of impact capital stuff and things in the developing world which are considered humanitarian, but of course they're sustainable because they have an economic component to them. And the relationship there is only going to improve. And there are many satellite things like the World Food Program and these other things that there's just an overlap in our mission. We care a lot about economic identity. We care a lot about improving the world. And so it is really important that we know of them and we work with them where and when we can. But before we partner with any person, we always start with principles and values and first principles, okay? So we have a very clear idea about who we are, what we want to accomplish when people use the software we write, the values behind that software. For example, always open source. If people come to me and say, write a bunch of proprietary software, I say, well, that sounds like a lot of fun for a different company. Best of luck. We tell them to go pound sand. Similarly, when we sit down and we think about things like social credit in China, these dystopian systems that basically the government owns your identity, your data, everything about who you are as a digital person is controlled by a third party. We will never advocate for architecture, infrastructure, or data management this way. So if a government comes to us and says, let's go do that, we're intrinsically opposed to it. So there's no way, no how. It's not going to happen. So there's the values part. Then we look at particular geographies and circumstances and we say, okay, what can we do within that value set for our mission as a company? And if it just so happens that the United Nations is doing it or the World Food Program or some other organization, and we can work together and still preserve those values, we do. Where we can't work together, tell them pound sand. So it's a big organization and it's a big world. Sometimes they're with us, sometimes we're not with us. And that's just the way it is. Will Iohk ever IPO? You know, I own 100% of the company, and it would be problematic for me if I had to actually be a CEO of a publicly traded company. Then I'd have to have a media person that tells me what I'm allowed to say, and then the SEC would do this. It's a lot to be part of a public. I'm friends with a lot of guys who are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and we'd have dinner and they'd tell me all the horror stories, the things they had to do, and all the stuff they had to deal with, activist shareholders suing them. So I'm not so keen on these types of things. But the world is changing, and maybe somewhere on the road we could do like Iohk becomes a security token, and then there's a more easy way of managing that, and then the whole company can be led bottom up. It'd make a lot more sense. So the ship hasn't quite sailed for that, but I'm not optimistic under current U.S. securities regulations to go pursue that. I enjoy being a mission-oriented company. Our point is not about profit. We wake up every day and we say, well, we have to make money to keep the lights on, so let's do that. But we're a mission company. And what that means is that every day we say, how do we build products that give people economic identity? How do we give people products where you are your own bank, you are your own identity, you are your own data store, basically all the things you need to interface with society. You control that, or at least have to give consent for someone else to be a middleman there, as opposed to the current system where you don't control anything. If we became a publicly traded company where the only thing that mattered was shareholder profit, quarterly returns, then suddenly we'd be like Google, where they say, don't be evil, but let's go work with China. Don't be evil, but then let's go work with the NSA and these other things. I don't want to go down that road. So if we could find a way to preserve the soul and the integrity of the organization and the mission of the organization, but also make that compatible with the way that these things are, that would make some sense because it would help diversify the organization. But I'm going to finish Cardano first. Let's get all that done before I even think about these crazy things. What is your exit strategy? Oh, you never need to sell the company or do an IPO to have an exit strategy. Not at all. You just hire a CEO to run the day-to-day, and then you turn it into a cash business. You get dividends. And you sit on the board as like the chairman, and then every quarter you just kind of hold them accountable to a roadmap. So no, the IPO is not an exit strategy for me. And I've made enough money throughout my life that I'm not particularly worried about anything. Charles, what do you think would happen to crypto in the event of an EMP? So like an EMP that would knock out the entire US infrastructure or the global infrastructure. So there's really only two things that could happen of that magnitude that would actually be internet scale. One would be that somebody detonates nuclear weapons in the atmosphere in just the right way, and then they create this halo catastrophic EMP that fries all the electronics. So the Rand Corporation and others years ago studied this stuff, and they wrote all these reports for the Pentagon. And it's a well-known thing. There's even Wikipedia pages and so forth about how this attack could be conducted. And unfortunately, there's not really good defenses against an attack like that. The other thing is some sort of astronomical event occurs, an astronomy event like a solar flare or something fries all the electronics. That can certainly happen too. In both cases, if they're internet scale, the last of your concerns will be about ADA. You'll be thinking more like, my car doesn't start, my lights in my house are off, I can't chill or heat anything, all of the supply chains are shut down, the grocery store, everything's going to rot in a week outside of the canned food and so forth. You're going to be like Walking Dead, worried for survival, not about how do I get access to my ADA. The good news is that there's a lot of persistent storage around there that probably would survive an event like that. And as a consequence, if only one survives, it's like finding some DNA. You can clone it, and so the whole network can be restored. So actually, we're in a significantly better position as a decentralized system to survive a global scale event like that than centralized fragile systems are, because they tend to be all co-located and highly optimized, and something that knocks them out knocks the whole thing out. So yeah, it's a scary thing to think. We have this whole digital world, and one thing could just like end the entire digital world. Will stablecoins be built on ADA? Yes. In fact, we're actively, aggressively looking into that. We will make some announcements about it. What are your current thoughts about Spakra? I'm staying out of Spakra. My only position about Spakra is I think it's a good idea for dedicated representation to form for stake pool operators. And my belief is more is better. So there will be diversity, geographic and leadership philosophy, and there's going to be differences of opinion. It is not my place to pick winners and losers. It's never been. I live underneath this system. And what I need is great partners to work with to have discussions about the economic parameters of the system once the system reaches full stability, so that we can get a better feedback loop on getting those parameters where they need to go for the system to be stable. So I'm glad to see Spakra form. I'm glad to see the innovation there, and I hope more will happen. And I hope that the foundation steps up and really gets deeply involved and starts doing things like an industrial steering committee, an advisory board, and these types of things, so that they can get more community participation in the organization. And I suspect that will happen. You know, the leadership is going to eventually move in that direction. But again, it's not my place to think about these things. I worry about, let's get it working. It's a lot of work. Any update on Endor? I haven't been part of Endor in a long time. I was an advisor for Endor, and they didn't have really enough money to pay advisors, and they decided to scale back a bit. And so I said, all right, well, if you ever need me, call me. Otherwise, I'll just stick around. But it's a cool project, and there's good people there. They work with Alex Pentland, and I'm always interested in these data analytics stuff and so forth. But I didn't really have a chance to roll up my sleeves and get deep into it like I did with Polymath. Polymath, I had a 1-year contract and filled out the contract, and I said, all right, well, you got Polymesh, good luck, go do it. They chose a tech stack with Polymesh that, you know, really I can't contribute much to. They built it on Parity substrate. So it's more Gavin's thing than my thing. Had they built something on the Cardano side, then obviously I'd still be actively advising and doing things. But they're good people there, and they work well. Every now and then I take these advisor positions, and I try to scope them to a particular task or a particular period of time. And sometimes they're compensated, sometimes they're not compensated. It just depends on the project. Charles, you look tired, my dude. Yeah, I drove from Wyoming to Colorado today. It's been a long week. I need to get a haircut. Charles, thoughts on cracking getting a banking license in Wyoming? Blew my mind. Jesse, he's a great guy, but he doesn't like regulators very much, and it was incredible to see him be able to pull that off in such an incredibly short period of time, all things considered. But he's running one of the few banks in the world that is 100% reserve, and it can go tell the FDIC to pound sand. So that's like the most Jesse of banks you could ever get. Kraken's a great organization. They have a lot of wonderful people there, like Austin and others. And I'm just so glad to see them not only embrace Wyoming, but then actually move real value there. And given that they now have a bank license, that's a very powerful thing for them, counted with the Federal Reserve and all this other stuff. So great for their customers, great for the ecosystem. And it's going to create a network effect where we see more legacy financial institutions work their way into our industry because they want the profits. Charles, there's been a bit of criticism about the lack of marketing. You got here late, Sebastian. Watch my comments. I gave a specific answer to that question. Charles, I'm very interested in your meeting with Brock Pierce. Yeah, there's going to be a video about it, actually. I shot a video specifically for Brock when I was in Wyoming. I know Brock very well. I've known him for years, since the Bitcoin Foundation. He ran for the chairman role there years ago. He's a good guy. He's got a big heart, and I like his campaign. I'm so tired of the politics right now. I'm just so tired. Amy Barrett recently got nominated. She's written over 100 decisions as a judge, and she's an extremely smart legal scholar. She clerked for Scalia. Regardless of where your politics sit, there's a lot about this woman that takes some serious time to go through and work through to get to a point where you can actually have a credible opinion about it. And she has strong values and principles, but those are then reflected in her personal life. She has 7 children, 5 that are her own and 2 that she adopted. So you'd suspect that, well, okay, this person's nominated. Let's spend some time and actually try to get an understanding of what type of justice would she be. As far as I can see, I think she's a textualist, Scalia style. Okay. But the attacks coming her way are like, oh, she adopted 2 kids from Haiti, and because they're Black Haitians, she's a colonialist and racist, and perhaps the adoption was illegal. I mean, seriously, this is what's coming out of Twitter. How can we expect getting anyone, reasonable people in government, if this is how we treat people who come in? You're told when you are growing up, get an education, be a good person, get married, do a good job, follow the law, and rise to the top of your profession. So people do it. And then when those people are chosen to go and serve in government, now the game is every mistake that that person made, regardless of it's big or bad, or if it's even a mistake, let's analyze that and brutally attack them. And if we can't attack them, attack their family and question choices that they made. How many of you watched the horrible things that happened in Haiti 10 years ago and said, boy, I should do something? Very few people actually did anything. Some people opened their wallet and donated a little money, mostly to these corrupt charities. And then somebody wakes up and adopts people and chooses to spend a decade of their life raising children that aren't their own, who are in some of the worst positions in the world. Normally, where I come from, that's a good act. But apparently this is an act of racism and colonialism. And the people who propagate these theories are now chosen to go teach these things in our schools, our universities, and so forth. This can't continue. You're going to get lower and lower and lower quality in government, number one. Number two, the way we communicate with each other is no longer about what problem are we trying to solve, how are we trying to work together to solve a problem. It's how does my side get power from this? So let's say there's a fire. Normal human beings would look at a forest fire and say, how do we put out the forest fire? We now live in a political reality where we say, okay, who politically benefits from this forest fire? Should we put it out now or wait a week from now or 2 weeks from now? You know, this forest fire in Wyoming, for example, there was a group of ranchers and others in the state who saw federal land on fire. So they went and said, hey, can we put it out? And the federal government told them, stand down. They were told not to put out the fire. We're going to go do that. And then the ineptitude and incompetence of the federal government there, they didn't do anything. And now there's a huge fire in Wyoming. It's destroyed, I think, 80,000 acres or something like that. It was literally Red Dawn. This is insanity. And then the response won't be, okay, how do we avoid this from ever happening again? It's going to be, how do we politically protect ourselves? That's the world we live in now. You know, and everything is just so political. And nothing makes sense. People don't even understand what institutions are supposed to do. Like the judiciary, for example. Why do you have people appointed for life? Because they're not political operators and they're not subject to political pressure. So then why would you want to give those types of people legislative power? Because they alone would then be more powerful than any senator, congressman, or the president himself. And there's no accountability whenever they decide left or right. But apparently that's the judicial philosophy we have to have. And that's why we've gone from, when I was born, justice is approved with unanimous consent. Like Scalia was 98-0. Ginsburg, I think, was the same, like 97-3. It was not controversial at all. To now every single time we go down this road, it's 50-50, and we have to destroy someone's entire life before they get on. And then after they get on, talk about how do we impeach them when we're in power. And every single decision must be political in some way. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity. So I'm done with it. I'm so done with it. I'm sick of the Republicans. I'm sick of the Democrats. I'm sick of the entire political reality. And you know what? They have been lying for so long. And every single time people have tried to follow the rules to change things, whether it be Ron Paul and his movement or Bernie Sanders and his movement, the system prevented those people from doing anything. You look no further to the 2012 Republican convention, how they just decided to arbitrarily change the rules of the convention to make sure that certain people weren't allowed to speak without any process. It doesn't even matter if there's rules. They just don't follow them. And let's look at how Bernie was treated on that side. So I'm done with it. And, you know, at this point, I'm never going to vote for a Republican or a Democrat again. I'm always going to vote third party. And I'm always going to support third party candidates. And if you believe that that's throwing your vote away, you're part of the problem. And any person that says this person shouldn't serve because their personal life has a demerit, I'm not going to listen to that person anymore. I'm done with it. I really am. The only way we can get forward is through solutions. You say, what problems are we trying to solve? For example, look at Voltaire. How did we structure that? We said, challenges. What do we want to solve? Where do we want to go? So you guys come and say, well, Charles, there's not enough marketing. Okay, I'm going to do what I can on my side to solve that problem. But you know what? There's now community funds available, and every few months, more and more and more. And at the current rate of inflation, $6 million a month will fill up the treasury. And if we go to $1, it'd be $60 million a month. That's community money. So stop talking about how nothing is being done. Let's talk about the solution. Where should we market? Who should we market to? Who should do that marketing? If you run a marketing firm, this is a way to get a contract to go do that. Go make the case to the community and solve the problem. We have to start thinking this way. We have to start thinking for ourselves. We have to start using common sense. We have to start working together and actually having common goals. We look to America or any of these other countries, we should have goals. Okay, vaccines are coming out. It should be non-controversial to discuss how do we distribute them to all the citizens. Instead, it's all political. Safe and effective. People say, oh, I don't believe it's safe and effective. Well, then tell me what the burden of proof is. And if you don't know it, tell me who does know it. Let's have a real conversation about that. Okay, but it's not acceptable just to say no and just leave things the way that they are. You have to say, what are we trying to solve? How are we going to get it done? And if that is not the way to do it, then tell me an alternative way. And if you can't, then let's go try it if you can live with it. Okay? It's not about consensus. It's about consent in that respect. And so it was really a breath of fresh air talking to Brock because he's tired too. We're all tired. He's running around spending millions of dollars running for president. And if he accomplishes anything, just getting people into a mindset that we have to talk differently and treat each other differently. And he's never going to run a negative ad, ever. And we should never reward people for negative ads, because what are you accomplishing when you say, vote for me because the other person is so horrible? That's like saying you go and you get sick. You go to your doctor and you need a heart surgery. And there's like 2 doctors you could choose. And so, or let's say even more, like 5 doctors you can choose. Yeah, okay. And then you go one of them, those doctors, and you say, I need a heart surgery. And he says, what you say to him, can you tell me your qualifications? And he immediately just says, Bob Smith over there, he was sued for malpractice 3 times. Like, honestly, this is where we're at in politics. You walk to this politician, you say, tell me what you want to accomplish. Like Andrew Yang, he says, AI and all this automation and these billionaires are eating us alive, and we need UBI, and here's why, and here's what it's going to do for society. Great. And people loved him for that. He wasn't allowed to participate because the system was rigged, but they at least loved him for that. Okay. Could you imagine how effective Yang would have been had they say, well, why should I vote for you, Andrew? Biden has dementia. Like, okay, what the fuck does that have to do with all the price of tea in China? I mean, it's like, come on, give me something real here. What are you going to do? What is your vision? What problems are you going to solve? And so forth. And our political system is like this. And now for the next month, we're going to go through hell. October is going to be horrible, absolutely horrible. We're going to have October surprise here, October surprise here. I wouldn't even be surprised if there was a Donald Trump, Don Jr. sex tape at this point. I don't know. I mean, it's like so crazy what's going on right now. And at the end of the day, we're going to get to November 3rd. And here's what's going to happen. And this is what makes me so sad. Trump is going to declare victory, and Biden is going to declare victory. The votes don't matter. Both of them have basically said the election's illegitimate. Okay? So then it goes straight to the courts. But the courts are illegitimate now because that process has been perverted. Every state, there's going to be a lawsuit. Meanwhile, protests galore. Every city in America, tens of thousands of people burning things down, shooting at each other. And then the police crack down on them. And then there'll be a counter reaction to that. So we know we're walking into an event without legitimacy and blood. 100 million Americans who were eligible to vote did not vote in 2016. Probably the same amount or more for this election. We're not consenting to this. We don't want this anymore, but we're told we have to. And if you have the audacity to vote for a third party, you're part of the problem. You're evil. So it's going to stop one way or the other. Either we're going to run out of money and fall into martial law and have a chaotic civil war, or somebody's going to get it through their head that we have to govern differently. And I'm optimistic for the second part, and I hope we can achieve that. But there are many people who have already given up, and they believe it's the first part. That's my political rant for the day. And, these types of comments make me sad, too. It says, I take a bathroom break and grab a drink during the political rant portion of the AMA. You are not divorced from this. Whether you love me, hate me, want to listen to me, or not listen to me, you have to be literally blind and deaf not to recognize what is going on right now. We are right now in an era of change. And whether you have freedom or not, what power you personally have and what's taken from you or not, is going to be decided in the next 5 or 10 years. Guys, I have to wear a mask when I go outside. People in Hawaii are getting tickets for sitting alone on beaches during the nighttime. This is not okay. You say, oh, but it's just temporary. Tell me, when governments take your freedoms, when do they give them back? I remember September 11th, we created the Department of Homeland Security. They start molesting children and old people when they fly. They say these are temporary measures. Things will go back to normal. 20 years of war, trillions of dollars spent, millions of people killed, generations of people fighting. father fights in the war. His children are fighting the war now. Did it ever stop or go back? So you can believe it doesn't impact you or affect you, whether you live in America or not. If you don't live in America, what America does has a huge impact on the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is no better than here. From Boris Johnson in the UK to what's going on in Japan, things are bad. And you have to be politically aware. You have to think about these things. You have to have an opinion about what you want in your leadership, what you want in your media, what you want with the platforms that you use. The fact-checking alone is an invitation for censorship. And who controls the fact-checkers on all of these social media platforms? PolitiFact. Oh, okay. This other organization. Oh, okay. So all I have to do then to own what's right and what's wrong, what's true, what's not true, whether you get to post something or not, is take over 6 organizations. Okay. And how big and how powerful are these organizations? Not really that large. Oh, okay. So if I just buy them, one billionaire can own all of them. And then suddenly they get to decide what's true, what's not true. There's contrary evidence. Sorry, that's not factual. And not only do we say that, it's deplatformed, so no one even sees it. This is the world you're living in as much as me. You can ignore it. Okay. We could talk about Cardano. Great. So what are we using Cardano for then? What are we building Cardano for then? What's the point of all of this? Is it a magic Rube Goldberg machine to get you rich? And then you get that money. Is it going to be worth anything? And what happens when you have the money and the government shows up and says, yeah, we don't like you, and they take it from you? What court do you go to? Oh, that's right. You have no rights. You can't just say, I like one part, but then the other part is a distraction. It's irrelevant or it's unnecessary. This is why I keep ranting about this stuff and keep talking about this stuff. You cannot separate the politics from the crypto. This entire movement has always been about the reinvention of society as a whole. One thing, not the parts of society you like, but then the other parts, who cares? When you get to the craziness of saying we're going to create our own money, you are also going to create your own voting systems, your own notion of the corporation, your own notion of property rights, your own notion of data privacy, your own notion of identity, your own notion of interaction. Then you start talking about, why don't I have freedom of association, commerce, and exchange and expression? Why don't I have these things? Oh, well, I'll just go build those tools too. And then what happens after you're vested and your entire livelihood is connected to this? And then the government says, nah, we're not going to let you do that. Imagine being a YouTuber and you make $150,000 a year. And then you wake up, you don't know why your YouTube channel is shut down. How do you feed your kids? How do you pay your mortgage? Who do you talk to? You pick up the phone? You send them an email? Okay. Oh, your Google account's been shut down too. What do? You sue them? With what money? We can't even get scammer accounts taken down. And YouTube is being sued by the co-founder of Apple and by billionaires. What chance does that guy with $150,000 stand? And those platforms now control the majority of discourse in the entire world. Your entire career has just been turned off. Congratulations. Go find another job. Okay. What about all your fans? Well, they can't speak out against it. They mention it, their accounts get shut off or their posts get censored. What can they do? This is not political. We should have rights about this, right? Oh, but what happens when the corporations have more money than you? Well, they can just tell the government what to do. Oh, okay. So no matter how you vote, the people who get into office, both sides, will basically protect that corporation and make sure that no regulation comes their way to make what they just did to you go away. So build an alternative platform. But when you build the alternative platform, what's the first thing they try to do? Make it illegal. Look at cryptocurrencies in New York City. We're starting to get progress. Wall Street loves it. People are very excited about it. The people who own Wall Street say, it's a competitor. And they call it Ben Losky, and then we get BitLicense. The entire industry dies. Absolutely dies. You have to go to a place that digs coal out of the ground and raises cattle, and people visit Yellowstone to actually get laws that New York City should have had. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity. So don't tell me that politics is not important. If you're ignoring that side of it, you're ignoring the entire point of everything that we're doing and the reason why we do what we do. And if you think differently, okay. but you're going to get more of the same. And then we're going to wake up some days and all of these platforms will be controlled and co-opted, just like YouTube, and it's going to get worse. If you say the wrong things, you do the wrong things, your money's turned off. Your driver's license is turned off. You can't turn on your car. That's the world you're going to go into. Eric Miller, what did he say? I'm leaving medicine because of the level of corruption, tyranny coming from the industry. You know, my family's been in medicine since the 1950s, and it's changed a lot. It used to be they had direct relationship with the patients. There weren't really big insurance companies. There was no Medicare, Medicaid. And now it's just a humongous bureaucracy. And you're basically told as a physician what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do with respect to treating your patients. So if you think, after you've read all the literature, you've looked at the totality of all things, that a particular drug or treatment is good for your patient, if this falls outside of orthodoxy, there's a very good possibility that somebody will stop you or your license will be taken from you. There's no greater example of that than what's happened with the hydroxychloroquine side of things. Why is this a newspaper conversation? Why is this a political conversation? It's a doctor conversation. If you have a prescription drug system, you trust your doctors to basically understand what drugs to give the patient. They have to go to medical school. They have to go to residency. They have to get board certified. They have to maintain good standing in the medical community. So we know they're good research consumers. We know they have substantial clinical experience. So if I get sick and I go to my doctor, I trust them to be able to look at everything in the world and tell me what's good for me. So then why is it that the news is telling us what drugs we're allowed to take and not? It's insanity to me. Absolute insanity to me. And I can understand why people are leaving medicine, either from the tort problems we have terrible lawsuit issues here, and malpractice insurance is so expensive, to the fact that you're no longer autonomous as a physician. And yeah, it's like, what's the point of the profession? And they say, oh, but if you're hurting the patient, well, yeah, then you intervene. And that's why we have state boards that give you your medical license. It's why there's a complaint system. It's why you have fellow colleagues who call you into question. You have hospital rights, which require certain standards. You're not an island. You live in an ecosystem. And the whole medical system is just screwy in the United States. And it just shows you politics is getting into every single domain and aspect of our lives. And it's so exhausting and tiring. The places where it should be are when we talk about where do we want to go and how should the future be. It shouldn't be in our sports and our medicine and the things that we do to keep ourselves healthy and safe and entertained. Ugh. How's staking looking for Ada? Things going well? Yeah. Staking's been happening every day. 1,200 registered stake pools. Half the entire network is delegated. I think we're like a third or more of the blocks are being made by stake pool operators. Every 5 days, the network keeps getting more decentralized. Looking through with this software. Push lifestyle, diet, and exercise. Let's make the whole world blue zone, Charles. Yeah. Blue zones are zones that people live a very long time, and there's several of them. There's a place in the Mediterranean where they call it like the Island of Immortals, and all the people there live into their hundreds. And Okinawa is another place that is historically very, very healthy. And yeah, there's a lot of lifestyle things that you can do to live well. If anything, just not being fat and exercising every day, those two things alone probably massively improve your quality of life, and especially at the tail end of it. And it's easier said than done. You know, I used to be in great shape myself, and now I weigh about 230 pounds. And I said, oh, this pandemic, God, never been a better opportunity since I'm at home to lose weight. And I was 215. I gained 15 pounds. It's really easy to gain the weight. It's a lot harder to take it off. But I have good people, and the big issue is no matter how good your diet is or what you do, stress has a big influence on it, and you have to get the metabolism right. And food in America is not so good. I'll agree with that statement. The food in America is poisonous. I do have a garden though, and I tell you, some of the food I eat there is amazing. Like I have my own squash and my own tomatoes and these things, and you get to cook them on up. Will Iohk be hiring CPAs in the coming years? We have a CFO. Charles asking, you lost weight though. Yeah, I can lose weight. It's not the problem. It's keeping it off. Watch out for gout. Already have it. It runs in the family. My dad's got it. I got it. Yeah. Garden looks amazing. Yeah, it's a beautiful garden. A lot of raised beds. And I'm going to build some greenhouses as well so I can have a 24/7 garden. Gonna get an RTX 3090 now for your rig. No, I bought this 2080 RTX literally just a few weeks before the 3080 RTX was announced. I figured the performance would be like 20% better. I said, who cares? And they're getting that damn 2X. You bastards. NVIDIA screwed me, man. It screwed me. But remember, there's the guy who buys the iPhone the day before the announcement of the new one. So it is what it is. Drink clean water, lots of it. I do. I actually, see if I have my water bottle. I don't. I've been drinking 3 liters a day. Go vegan, haha. No. Celery seeds for inflammation, huh? We actually have a lot of doctors and nutritionists in the Cardano community, and they always send me advice from time to time about healthy living and lifestyle. And most of the advice is actually somewhat overlapping, which is encouraging. I think people are becoming more aware. Are you happy with Gogan's progress? Yeah, actually I am. There's an enormous amount of progress that's happening. And remember, we're releasing like crazy. So it's not about commits, it's about releases. And every week there's something coming out, whether GraphQL or DB-Sync or Smash or Node or Daedalus or a Plutus related object. And so we're in this delivery culture now, and I'm very happy with that. So things are moving in the right direction. And, for developer acquisition, I think we have a really good concept there. What's something useful to learn right now? Problem solving in general is a really good thing to think about. I'm a bit biased because I come from the mathematical community, and that's like the entire point of the industry, right? Learn how to solve problems. But people have turned this into its own field of study, and they're pulling it into the business schools, and they're pulling it all across academic disciplines. There's even great courses on Coursera specifically dedicated to problem solving. And that's just basically teaching how to think, where you wake up and you say, oh, okay, first off, when someone comes to you with a problem, it's not about the problem that they've given you, because oftentimes they're giving you surface level problems and not the root cause. And what they're asking for is not what they want. So it's the first thing that you learn in consulting or when you do solutions architecture for people is get to the root cause and actually try to get an understanding of what are they trying to solve? What are they trying to do? If you don't do that, almost always you fail, because you can literally do 100% of what they ask you to do. You get to the end of the rainbow and it doesn't work because you've only solved the symptom, not the underlying root cause. Like, for example, if somebody comes to you with bad breath, let's say you're a doctor or a dentist or something like that. You say, oh, okay, here's some mouthwash. Okay. And maybe it masks it and the breath keeps getting worse. And let's say they forget the mouthwash, the breath is terrible. So they use gum and all this other stuff. Well, maybe they have gingivitis. Maybe they have acid reflux. Maybe they have something else that's causing the bad breath. So you can give them gum, you can give them mouthwash, but if you don't solve the root cause, you never solve the underlying problem for the patient. Well, similarly, when you look at business problems, when you look at technological problems, scientific problems, it's not make it faster, make it cheaper, make me more money. Usually there's a systemic issue that is inhibiting their ability to do something or compete or whatever have you. So if you had to learn any skill right here, right now, just learn how to think this way about how do we get to root cause on a problem? How do we identify what the client is actually asking for, what I actually want to do? And then go from there to, okay, how do we think about what do we need to learn to be able to not only propose a solution, but validate that the solution is done. For example, with the metadata feature with Cardano, the scientists got together and they wrote this beautiful spec, metadata. And I said, hey, what's our feature pairing with the metadata? So we have metadata, but who's the consumer of that feature? Beefchain, we have the Georgia deal, et cetera, okay? So these are the people using it. The feature is not done until they're connected. People say it's done and it's implemented, and the people who consume it say that it solves their problem. Okay, so you always have to have feature pairing. It's a small thing, but it's a necessary thing for you to get where you need to go. Same for the Bittrex issue. We have this great team of engineers. They're working their asses off and they're building all this stuff, and they're seeing real beautiful improvements with the wallet backend that are universally beneficial for everybody. But Bittrex is the consumer here. So they receive it and they tell us it's good enough or not good enough. And if it's not good enough, they give us the logs and a lot of other things, and then we iterate again. It's frustrating, it takes time, but it makes you better, and ultimately it makes everything better. So there you go. Charles, is working 100 hours a week sustainable? No, and you should not. It's an indication of a failed system or poor planning. And so that's a management problem. The most incredible people I have ever met who on the product and project management side were able to manage mammoth large-scale projects, 5,000 people, 10,000 people, 60 agencies or whatever, and they go home at 4 o'clock every day and they work like 35 hours, 40 hours. It's not the amount of hours you work, it's sustainable hours. And also, if you're having to consistently work more than you expected, it's a failure in planning and system. Or you're simply trying to do too much too quickly. Schools have been increasingly teaching people what to think instead of how to think. It's been going on for a long time. Any advice for the intro learning to Haskell, a book or site? I'd recommend the Haskell book. I think it's haskellbook.com. It's a tome, but it's a very good tome. It's a good one to read. Charles, can you recommend a couple of companies one can go to for app development? Vacuum Labs is great. ATIX, ATIX is another one that's great. Both of them highly recommend. Cossack Labs is quite good too. And at some point, I think the foundation is going to have some form of Cardano certified solutions provider, something like that. So then you can look at a list and pick which one fits best for you. Chill with the politics. Go home, Tal. You're drunk. Let's see here. True random number generator for Debs and Gogan. Well, we have the VRF. It would be nice to expose that functionality, and then you can actually have the stake pools act as cryptographic beacons. How's your Massey Ferguson working out? 80 horsepower of amazingness Absolutely amazingness. Although when I was up in Wyoming, all those ranchers up there were picking on me. They're like, "This is John Deere country, sir." And I was like, "Come on, man. Massey's good." And apparently my tractor is too small for them. They have big tractors. Are the gnomes and fairies still chilling? I brought them inside, and I got more winter-ready gnomes, but I am going to paint the gnomes with glow-in-the-dark paint. Your faucet is dripping. No, that is not a faucet, sir. That is an arrow garden. And that arrow garden is right now growing 9 beautiful flowers. So in about 2 weeks, I'll be able to look over and see these beautiful blooming flowers. There'll be snow on the ground outside, and I'll still have green and life around me. Have you ever visited Singapore? Many times. How's Atala coming along in Ethiopia? Quite well. And also we have Cardano in Ethiopia. Can't read that one. Don't speak Spanish. Any updates on the African Farmer Voucher program? Yeah, I'm going to get an update this week about where we sit there. We lost the primary contract to another company that's based in Ethiopia, and they underbid us by an obscene amount. There's just no way they can service the contract, in my view, at that price level. And I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to subcontract some things out. And they did reach out to us and ask to be a subcontractor. But I have not gotten an update because right when all that was happening, the internet in Ethiopia got shut down because of a sectarian issue. And things are finally back a bit, but things are still a little tough. So it slowed everything down in Africa, unfortunately. But that's okay. There are 3 other projects we're bidding on as well, and some of them have over 1 million users. So it's a game of numbers, and you just keep clicking on it. Oh, this one's fun. Go hack someone else's channel. Create your own channel. Your own audience is famous. Rodriguez will hit you with a lawsuit, so you rot in jail. Fucking sue me. Go ahead. And I'm going to have so much fun countersuing you guys. Why? Because a hacker hacked your channel, put videos of me on that channel to steal money from people. If you're so stupid, you can't understand that I don't benefit from that. In fact, I'm the victim in that. I would love to be sued. And I would love to show up for court and explain it to you guys in person in a very, very specific way and sue you for wasting my time. And you'll have to pay for my legal fees and you'll have to pay your own lawyers. Go to hell, you people. Go to hell. You know, my entire channels for weeks and weeks and weeks have been plagued by this. Absolutely plagued by this. And people are so stupid, they can't understand what's going on. They can't do Google searches. They can't see that I put banners saying I will never give away ADA. They can't see for 5 minutes that this is a scam and it benefits me in no way. In fact, we're the victims of it, as is Ethereum, as is Ripple, as is all the people in the Bitcoin space. They even use Elon Musk. There were hackers who hacked into Bill Gates's and Obama's and Biden's Twitter feeds to steal Bitcoin for people in a giveaway scam. What? Bill Gates is stealing Bitcoin from people? Get a fucking brain, you loser. You know, and they downvote the videos. They plague the comment section with this. And this is another example of what happens when these things happen. You know, and it's extraordinary. Guys, I've gotten death threats. There was a Serbian channel that was taken over about a month and a half ago. And these kids reached out to me over email, basically saying they were going to come kill me and giving me a description of what Serbian criminal group that they belong to. And it just happens and happens and happens and happens and happens. And again, what can we do? I can sue YouTube like Steve Wozniak is. I can sue YouTube like Ripple is. And yeah, we'll spend 2 years in court and they won't apologize. Maybe we win a little bit of money. Will they change their behavior? No. And these things will continue. Meanwhile, these idiots in these channels blame me. They have no idea what's going on. Think for yourself. Ugh. Charles, you should see about using the DMCA, about striking every one of those scams that use your image, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. You see, here's the problem. I can get them taken down. The community does. They file a complaint. We file a complaint if we see it. And then within 24 to 72 hours, usually it gets taken down. What happens is that the people doing this write scripts to create fake accounts, fake bots. And so even if you take one down, you're taking down a robot. And there's another robot waiting to take that robot's place. And it happens over and over and over again. So the only way you can beat a robot is with another robot. And the only person who has that robot to beat that robot is YouTube itself. They have built very sophisticated protocols to identify bad content, child pornography, animal abuse, political speech they don't like. And automatically it can flag those videos and take them down. So those very same algorithms, if they were applied to a learning set of all the scams that have happened, would easily be able to identify the scams and take down the videos automatically with a few false positives here and there. They just won't do it. So we can do it as a community, and we can say, this video over here is bad, and we can report that video. And every single day, I get 2 or 3 emails from well-intended members of the community, and they say, Charles, you should do something about this video. And I could spend 8 hours a day of my time doing nothing but clicking report, 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 report. It's so fucked up that on Twitter, when people create fake accounts of me, when I report it and say, this is impersonating me, Twitter expects me to upload for each of those reports a copy of my passport to prove my own identity. And they're allowed to have an account asserting that they're me. You can't win. And if it gets taken down, another one's created. That's how this works. And I get death threats and all these other things, and people plague my channel. If you go to any of my videos the last 6 weeks, you will see, usually not in English, but in some other language, tons of people showing up saying, why did you hack this person's channel? Why did you hack this person? You go to hell. You're a bastard. You're a horrible. You're a hacker, and these types of things. And I'm just so tired of it. Charles, do you still have in mind doing an update for the security lecture you did a while back? Thanks for the work from the Bronx. Well, I love the Bronx. It's a fun place. Little while I lived in Queens, in Jamaica, Queens. I had to take the E-line into the city. And that was a really unique experience. It was right next to Van Wyck Station. Bronx, it's a special place. And there's some damn good restaurants there. I hope they survive the coronavirus. As for the update to the security lecture video, the security lecture video was an unexpected success. I expected maybe 5 people would watch it. I just wanted to have something out there and say, this is how you should think about security. And I got so much great feedback on it from my own company, InfoSec experts who emailed me with helpful suggestions. And I even bought like a Nitro key because people said you should maybe have an open source alternative. So it was a really fun thing to do. I will do an update on it, but I'm actually taking a look at some content on Udemy, specifically revolving around information security, offensive InfoSec, so hacking into things. And after I finish those courses, I'm going to redo the security lecture. It remains to be seen whether I do it as a multi-part series where I do maybe 10 to 15-minute clips and then create a playlist, or if I do it as another giant 2-hour video. Shot that entire video without a script, by the way. I just did it from memory. How's Beefchain coming along? Pretty well, pretty well. We'll talk less about it because we talk so much about it, and we'll showcase other partners. And every single product summit update that we do, we're going to showcase a partner. We're going to showcase somebody building on Cardano, and hopefully have a whole area for that. Did you guys use, oh, actually, I can put these questions on the screen. That's cool. I like StreamYard. I said, did you guys use the already existing formal verification tools or built your own at Cardano? We used existing tools. We were pretty low tech for Cardano itself. We used LaTeX. We wrote reference Haskell. But we've used everything from Coq to Idris to Agda to Isabel for various different things throughout the time in Cardano. Hide. Okay. From Go Heart Go, do you think we will have a deep recession in the near future? And that's a really good one. Yes. I think we're going to have not only a recession, but it looks like we actually could go into a global depression because of what happened as a response to coronavirus. I expect the unemployment rate to be 10 to 15% within the United States. In the developing world, many countries, double digit, 20%, 30%. And it's going to take 5 to 10 years for the global economy to recover. That's my prediction. General Zod, kneel before Zod. What excites you most about 2021? That's a good one too. I'm excited that I get to travel again and that the world's going to be back in business. That's one thing. The other thing is that Cardano will start being an end-to-end system as opposed to an aspirational system. So we saw a lot of this year with Shelly, and we'll see it at the tail end of the year with some Gogan launches. And obviously, we're seeing the birth of Voltaire. But as we get deeper into 2021, we'll have hundreds of dApps and tokens and monthly votes and tens of thousands of people doing various things across the world, very diverse, and better funding structure, and just so many cool things in the Cardano ecosystem to sustain it and grow it. And we'll no longer be talking about these things like when Coinbase or when this. Rather, we'll actually be having deep conversations about one app versus another app, one approach versus another approach. And then also all these Africa contracts and Eastern Europe contracts and so forth will start maturing beyond pilots and turn into full utilities that actually are economically sustainable. And so millions of users are flooding in year by year, and all these deals are being serviced. So I'm most excited about that. It's going to be a very different year than 2020 is in so many different ways. And also just to travel again. It's going to be fun. I miss traveling. What do you think about Tesla's SpaceX project? Tesla, SpaceX, separate companies. SpaceX is a great company. It's independent of Tesla, but they're interconnected with each other in that Tesla technology works its way into SpaceX and vice versa because they're sister companies in that respect. And I think it's some of the most meaningful work that we've ever seen in the world. It's very exciting. This is an example of when you say, when marketing, a question we have to answer. What should I know as a developer to build on Cardano? So that's a question we're going to answer. I'm not going to do it here. I've answered this question 4 or 5 times in prior AMAs and interviews. But these are the things when you really think around marketing, you say, like, how do we actually answer this? Because he's asking something, but then there's a lot that is in this question, like as a developer to build on Cardano. So what do we mean by developer? And what do we mean by build on Cardano? Okay. And so you really have to drill into that. You have to create personas. There's a world of difference between the 16-year-old kid that just learned about JavaScript and wrote his first website to the 45-year-old who's writing control software for a plane autopilot. Okay, huge error between these two people, but they're both developers. And when you say build on Cardano, are you saying, okay, I'm going to issue a token, Charles coin, and trade it and just be a fun little cutesy project? Or am I connecting my ticket management system for Ticketmaster to Cardano? Like, huge differences between these two things. But good marketing should be able to dissect that and create a journey so that people in different personas can actually go through and get reasonable answers to these types of things. And then what will happen is that you'll have all these people say, well, what about this? Like, for example, whenever you choose A, by definition, you're not choosing B. So when you say, we're going to go functional, that means you're not imperative, okay, or you're going to have a harder time with that. So if somebody doesn't buy that functional is the approach, they're just going to ignore that you're even doing that, and they'll go and say, well, why don't you have like JavaScript? Why don't you have like Python? Python's my favorite language. Well, you should have Python support. Okay, so you have to be very careful about how you answer these things. You have to discuss trade-offs, market dynamics. You have to really well define your developer. You have to set up an asset strategy. And then he says, what should you know? Well, okay, we could try and say, learn some Haskell, learn some functional programming techniques, but 95% of your application may be non-Plutus. It may be running off-chain on a server, in which case maybe being a node guy is a lot more sensible. And you're going to outsource all of the Cardano development to a third party because you don't want to actually handle that small shim of a smart contract that's running on the system. On the other hand, you might have a very heavy decentralized application and you're running the whole thing on Cardano, in which case you're a hardcore Plutus programmer. See, so different skill sets. So this is a cool question to answer. When we say when marketing, this is what we mean by it. Answering questions like this in ways that are meaningful and useful. This is a cool one. Charles, thoughts on the Filecoin project led by Juan Bennett, which is launching very soon. Juan's done IPFS and many other things. Excited about these types of things. Decentralized infrastructure is universally ubiquitous and useful, and everything he's done is open source. So if we find some good ideas in it, we will definitely use those ideas. And it is so cool that we live in an ecosystem that does that for us. How did you meet Ben Gortzel? Ben and I met through Mihaela, who's a friend of mine. She's a scientist, and she specializes in complex theory and systems and these things. And she's written all these amazing papers on the topic. And she's friends with Ben, and she's friends with lots of other people. She said, hey, would you like to meet him? I said, sure. And it turned out he was already a really big fan of Cardano. So we talked to Ben a few times over Google Hangouts. And I said, Ben, I'm going to Wyoming. You want to come with? And he said, sure. So he flew from Seattle over to Wyoming. It was quite fortuitous that he was still in the United States, so he could actually come. And we hit it off. The guy got his PhD in math at 21. Super bright guy, super bright guy, very deep in many different things. And we talked about everything from Curry-Howard correspondences to automated theorem provers to the nature of consciousness and things like AGI. Obviously, that's his domain. And it was just really fun. I talked to him for over 6 hours about various technical concepts. And then we did a 90-minute interview. I interviewed him, and we talked a lot about his project, SingularityNet and OpenCog and Cardano, and we'll release that probably this upcoming week. But this is an example of the kinds of people that you want around for your launch applications and your platform, because they know who they are and they're not adopting crypto because crypto. There's a very specific thing it's solving for them, but they're their own people. They have their own dreams. Like Ben, he really, really wants to create an artificial general intelligence. And he thinks he knows how to do it with OpenCog, and there's some good evidence behind that. So he's just going to go do that. And he has all these beautiful projects like SingularityNet and so forth, which assist him in that path to achieve that. But at the end of the day, whether we exist or not, he's going to keep doing that. So our job is to get out of the way and help him get these types of things done a little bit better for the things he wants to solve. And as long as you have partnerships like that, then you have a real platform. It's something that's there to stay. What role will David Likes Crypto have in Iohk? He is going to make videos. So he's going to help us with that product marketing. And what David does really well is he makes concise, easy to understand, beautiful content. So what we're doing is we're just going to go ahead and give him all the resources he needs to do more of what he's already doing and better. And we're going to have him be a pivotal component of the product marketing strategy. So those explainer videos on Ouroboros and explainer videos on extended UTXO, David's going to go do that alongside others. And we're going to get them out there and they're going to be amazing. And then we're going to get not just content like he already has, but more content and more diverse content and more frequent content because there's now resources behind what he does. My philosophy is find the best people and just get out of their way and give them what they need to go and do amazing things. Yes. Do you think gaming in Cardano will be viable as soon as Gogan ships? So that's a very interesting question, and it absolutely depends on what you mean by gaming, Gianfranco Diaz. So if you mean by gaming gambling, I mean, that's always possible. If you mean by gaming like video games and integrating video games into Cardano, like CryptoKitties, I think both of them have their merits and value to the ecosystem. And actually, what gets me most excited is the latter. I would love to see super creative video games on Cardano. As many of you know, I actually have my own game studio. We haven't created anything yet, but I've been buying IP. And one of these days, I'll turn it on, and every game we build will have a blockchain component to it. And every game I build, I'll deploy that blockchain component on Cardano. So there's already things like next generation digital rights management, having unique items in the game that are connected to tokens, so you can do that, preserving your save state on a blockchain. There's a lot of things to think about there. And actually, Ben Gortzel, we actually talked about this a lot. And my CTO, Roman, he got a PhD in computer science, but his dissertation was in gaming. Our CTO actually came up with Pokemon Go 10 years before Pokemon Go existed. So we have a lot of people that are closet gamers or love game mechanics and these types of things. And I see enormous value to it. And it's actually not hard with what we've constructed to put some of those game components on Cardano as soon as Gogan ships. And then over time, things can be scaled up. It would be super cool to have a partnership with some open source gaming frameworks, like Babylon JS or these types of things, or perhaps even commercial frameworks like Unity, for example, and actually have a cryptocurrency backend for it. So if a game developer wants to do that, that's something that can be pushed through. And these are partnerships we're going to try to pursue in 2021. Our commercial team is chomping at the bit for these types of plays. Mm-hmm. Do you think Shelly is the hardest development phase for Cardano? Yeah. Shelly was absolutely brutal in so many ways, and we will never have to go through that again. I'd like to be on Lex's podcast too. As I say, Rogan after Gogan, Lex after Gogan too. Lot to talk about there, but he's a great guy. Went to Drexel, got a PhD, and I think artificial intelligence or some electrical engineering way of doing it. His dad's a prominent physicist, and he's now at MIT, and he's just a really bright dude. And he has a great interviews he does with people. I really enjoyed the one with Sheldon Solomon, and I started developing an affinity for Ernest Becker as a result of that. Vitalik was on Lex's show. I know, Vitalik's everywhere. Everybody loves that kid. He's special. How's John O'Connor? I'm not, by the way, guys, just purposely picking Connor's questions, but they are good questions. John's doing quite well. All right, Farah, I'm going to give you one shot. Ask me a question, whatever it is, and I'll answer your question. This is a fun one. Cardano is a paycheck for your company. Why the loyalty? Because my company's a mission-oriented company, and we need infrastructure to realize that mission. Our mission is to build the foundation so that people can get economic identity, people who don't have it. So I need a platform to do that. We created Cardano for that reason. And now it's starting to be realized. You see Prism with identity. You see the supply chain stuff we're doing. You see the voting things we're doing with Voltaire. You notice that these multi-assets can be just as well securities as they don't have to be. When we have the DeFi, then suddenly you have banking services and insurance and exchanges and these types of things. So the point is that as long as this platform is fertile, we can wake up and have 1 billion users, and it maintains the principles and integrity that we'd like a system like that to have. So I'm not loyal to platforms. I'm loyal to concepts and ideas and missions. And Cardano was built hand in glove to achieve that end. And that's why we're here. What does Duncan do for fun? He's actually an actor part-time. And he's played a certain cardinal in a certain play. Smart guy. Everybody's really special. I want you to answer Glenn's questions. Wait, which one's Glenn? Which question did I miss? Can you repost Glenn's question? I don't want to go scroll through the whole thing. Which particular question? Why Haskell and not O'Camel? Because we were more on the British side than the French side. Both of them would have been a suitable choice. And they're both great ecosystems. I just happen to prefer Haskell a little bit more. Big fan of lazy evaluation and these things. And also the people who created Haskell happen to work for me, like Phil Wadler, for example. So we're a little stronger in that ecosystem. If I spoke French and I went to school in Paris, almost certainly we would have written it in O'Camel. Glenn Ortiz, Charles, given the increase in U.S. national debt and the potential for the future weaker economy, can we make sure that non-algorithmic stablecoin on Cardano is based on a basket of currencies? So that's called a meta-stable token, and we are looking at that. And there are projects like Saga, for example, that have studied that as well. My preference would be to create a meta-stable token where you take stable coins that are based on fiat currencies, build a basket of them, and then create an asset that's synthetic to that. So you don't have the custodial risk. Or otherwise, we're in a situation where we're a bank. You actually have to take US dollars or euros or yen and put them in a bank account and hold them like the Tether people do. And that's just not a game I like playing. But if the blockchain is the custodian for an existing stable coin that's relatively stable, then it's just a matter of properly constructing the ballot for the metastable token. What gets really exciting is when you can remove the bank entirely, and that's the CBDC concept. And so we've been examining that as well. And I really like the idea of tethering CBDC with UBI. So in several countries, we are pitching the concept that let us go build a stable coin, rebuild your central bank infrastructure, make it intrinsically digital, and create you a nice ramp for offline transactions. And then every time a transaction fee occurs in the system, because you are the payment rails, it goes into a treasury, and that treasury is universal basic income for your people. So it's a real cool thing to sell for smaller economies, and it could be quite competitive to Tether and these other things. So we are looking into these things, and we've made some bids. That was version 1. And the US government got very upset about that. And I think version 2, if it survives, will just be backed by the US dollar. And I think this is another example of a person who thinks I stole the channel, going back to that rant. This question should be better asked to Vitalik. Has any of Charles's vision worked its way into Ethereum? At some point, he'll have to throw in the towel and say yes. No, none of his vision worked its way into our system. It's quite the opposite. Cardano is a different game entirely. It's your system. Soon to be Bitcoin. Through Taproot and what they've done, they're gradually extending their accounting model and capabilities. That's a pretty big one. Charles, do you know Jed? Yes. And David Mazzaris and the rest of the gang. No problems with Stellar. Decent guys. We get along. Can you expand on how the UBI system would work? So UBI works really well when you have sovereign wealth funds because it's like dividend distribution to the people of the country. And it's almost like a shareholder model. So Norway could do this very comfortably. They have this gargantuan sovereign wealth fund. It's almost $2 trillion. The Norwegians have more money than Saudi Arabia. Many people don't know that. So it's very possible that Norway could wake up and say, hey, you know what? We're just going to start paying dividends quarterly out of the sovereign wealth fund to our people. This is not redistribution. This was good fiscal policy. So the government got rich doing something very smart, and now they're sharing the wealth that they've accumulated with their people. So a sovereign wealth fund with a CBDC is an example of that. Good fiscal policy creates a product that's competitive on a global market, and effectively the use of this outside of the country produces almost like direct foreign investment, but it's pure profit. And that profit goes into a sovereign wealth fund, and then every single person in the country who's a citizen of that country would get dividends from that sovereign wealth fund as a condition of citizenship. So it encourages the citizens to say our government should not run deficits, but rather be running surpluses because we get paid if it runs a surplus. It makes good fiscal policy. So there you go. So that's what I think. And that'll be fun. Maybe somebody will take me up on it. Who knows? Do we have more of this? Yeah, we do. Charles, how is Legends of Valor coming along? Terrible. I haven't had time to work on it at all in the last few weeks. I've been incredibly busy with Cardano and other things. As I said before, Legends of Valor is in the bottom of the stack. And so if anything on Cardano or other projects comes up, any free time I have for it, love goes away. So that's the way it is. But that's the way it should be, because there are no customers for Legends of Valor. There haven't been since 1992. Where there are many people who care a lot about Cardano, and so Cardano takes priority. Have you ever read Nassim Taleb's books? Yes, Anti-Fragile, and the other one is Black Swan, which he's famous for. He's an interesting author. You hyped about Dune? Yes. Danny Villeneuve is my favorite director, and Dune's one of my favorite sci-fis. So that's like the peanut butter in your jelly, man. I am very excited about it. This is a good one. Any updates on the Cardano Wikipedia page? I'll let you know. No. Here's how fucked up it is. I own a video game, Legends of Valor. I bought the IP for it last year. Actually, this year. I was negotiating for a year and a half for that. And it has a Wikipedia page. I don't know how Legends of Valor has a Wikipedia page, but it does. No one has meaningfully played this game since 1992. Okay. 27 years ago or something like that. 28 years ago. And when I bought it, people updated the Wikipedia page to announce that I acquired it. That is notable. But Cardano, a $3 billion ecosystem with some of the top computer scientists in the world, with almost 100 academic papers, 1 million lines of code. We have been mentioned by the US House of Representatives, by the European Union Parliament, heads of state, hundreds of articles throughout the years, Wall Street Journal, all this stuff. Obviously, we're novel. The editors of Wikipedia say that we are not novel enough to deserve an article. But Legends of Valor, a game I own, is that no one has played in 28 years. And the citations there are credible citations, but Bloomberg is not a credible citation for Cardano. You tell me how that's not biased and who's responsible for this. One man, David Gerard, he's an editor for Wikipedia, who wrote a book about how all blockchains are scams and has gone on record repeatedly saying blockchains are all scams. And he gets to decide whether we're noteworthy and credible to get an article or not. That's where we're at. This is Wikipedia. It's I've never experienced something so blatantly Kafka-esque and disgusting. Yet people seem to think it's a credible resource. It is not. And every day this goes on, it diminishes their credibility. And the larger we get, the more comical it gets. And at some point, people are just going to build a replacement for it. And I'll probably be the first to do it. And Jimmy has no one to blame but himself. You're showing our age, bud. wait, I missed that. Showing my age. How's the Massey Ferguson? I already answered that. Come on, guys. Give me some good questions here. Space Vikings. Ha! That was Blizzard Entertainment, actually, I think. It was the first game that they made when they were like Synaptic Ideas or something. It was before they were called Blizzard Entertainment. That's a blast from the past. I remember Space Vikings. I'm surprised that anybody here is that old. Yeah, it was a great game. Silicon and Synapse. That was it. That was it. The Lost Vikings. And actually, they put in StarCraft 2, Wings of Liberty, an arcade game for the Lost Vikings. Exactly. Thank you. I encourage you guys to go Google it. In fact, if you look at the search trends, it's the first time in over 20 years people have actually started searching that game. But yes, there's a Wikipedia page. It blows your mind, right? You're going on 2 hours, bub. Yeah, I got no life. Do this for you guys. I have actually downloaded this book, The Three Body Problem. I'm looking forward to it. I have not read it yet. I haven't had the time. So, Trevor, do you have a specific question for me? You have to remember that they just come in and whatever's there is there, or else I have to search for the whole thing and stop for 20 or 30 seconds. If I had a moderator, then they would just pre-ask questions. But Trevor, please do ask a question. Could Neil Stephenson be Satoshi? I don't know. Sure. Would that make your life better if he was? Any thoughts on multi-party computations? Specifically, how close are we to seeing widespread support for threshold signatures? You need a lot of good underlying crypto to do that. That's why the propagation of things like Schnorr-SIGs, BLS, this stuff is good. There's tons of MPC protocols that are meaningful and useful, and it's just you adopt them on a case-by-case basis. Thoughts on potential life on Venus and its implications to the Fermi paradox? Ooh, that's a fun one. So Venus is a really cool planet. Actually, at one time, it probably looked a lot like Earth. It's relatively the same size. And it's just too close to the sun. And so it's become the closest thing humanity has ever discovered to hell. It's like 900 degrees on the surface. They have giant clouds of acid. It's not really a good place. However, recently, certain chemicals have been discovered on Venus that are very difficult to explain outside of a biological metabolism. And so there's some speculation that life could potentially exist on Venus. So perhaps billions of years ago, human-like life or some form of civilization could have materialized in Venus because at that time period, conditions would have perhaps been more like Earth. But now that's no longer the case. So anyway, it's cool to talk about and think about, and probes are always flying around studying these things. And the Russians were the most interested in Venus. They even did several missions to Venus, and there was a lot of hypotheses about perhaps people could live in the atmosphere of Venus. They can't live on the surface, but live in the atmosphere. I hope that these recent chemicals that have been discovered would be a good input into a decision process to send more probes to Venus. Now, as for the implications of Fermi paradox, for those of you who don't know, it's this kind of idea that we should see lots of life in the universe, and the fact that we don't is an indication that there's some event that will occur that's relatively universal throughout all life. And when they get to that event, it tends to extinct the entire species. So, for example, maybe the event of nuclear weapons or the event of AI or whatever. And that's why we don't see more life. So I don't think life on Venus has any impact, or the discovery of chemicals on Venus that could be markers for biological life would have an implication in the Fermi paradox necessarily. It's possible, if your system is built in the right way, that you don't have the evolutionary pressures that would ever form multicellular creatures. So you can get to the single cellular state, but you can't get to complex life forms. And that jump, that evolutionary jump, there's no pressure to achieve that. It's definitely possible. There's no guarantee of one-way evolution. And more complex forms can get extinct at any time. Yes, they matter enough to distribute millions of dollars. If you're talking about Cardano votes, if you're talking about political votes, no, your vote doesn't matter. In the shop. Been that way for 3 weeks. Nope. Serious answer. You got beef with F2? Nah, not at all. Hello from Canada, Charles. Well, hello from the United States, Chris. Yeah, that's what I assumed. They don't matter. I do not change my oil for the Lamborghini. Never do that. That is a very refined, delicate piece of machinery, and lots of things can go wrong. LOL, can we all agree that Charles needs to get some sleep? I'm feeling fine. I feel great. My lungs are filled with smoke, though. That's the only problem. Woke up this morning, and all this black gook from all of the ash in the air from the Wyoming fires. It's just sad. And here in Colorado, we've had fires, and I went to Tahoe, and there was fires in California. It's just nasty. Artwork over your right shoulder. Painting 1, painting 2, and painting 3. Hawaii. Yeah, that was by the year 2035. Isn't it great when the government tells us how the market's going to work and what you are and are not allowed to do? Java. I just haven't cut the hair. That's the problem. Yes, actually, I have a great air filter, an IQ Air filter. It's a HEPA filter, medical grade. They put them in hospitals. It even has a carbon filter as well for volatile chemicals. I have it right next to the bed. Really helps. The problem is I was in Wyoming in a Holiday Inn Express, and unfortunately, I couldn't bring that giant air filter with me. Why Java or C Sharp? I'm actually going to be making this decision when I go to Code Camp. I would do neither. I would do JavaScript or Python. Do not do Java or C Sharp if you can avoid it. You have to pick. Java is a bigger ecosystem. And there are all these beautiful languages like Julia and Scala and so forth, which are incredibly good and really nice to use. And they are in the Java ecosystem. So I would far more be in the Java ecosystem. C Sharp is a better language, and .NET and CLR much better framework. The only reason why it's not larger is that Microsoft didn't open source it for a large part of its life. Had they done that, Java would have died. It'd be gone. It'd been absorbed into the CLR. But I'd recommend Java if you have to pick, but I'd say neither. JavaScript is significantly better to start with. It's just a better ecosystem. Charles, why did you say learn TypeScript right after learning JavaScript? Because TypeScript is basically like better JavaScript. It's JavaScript with types, and it basically allows you to write far more maintainable and structured programs than just native JavaScript programs. Some of the recent flavors of JavaScript, especially ECMAScript 6 and beyond, reduced the need for TypeScript for maintainability, but there's still a lot of cool things in the TypeScript ecosystem that are quite useful. And TypeScript was not an academic language. It was created by Microsoft because they had this problem that they were porting all of their Office infrastructure and other things into the web, and they needed to have a JavaScript framework to work with it, and JavaScript just wasn't getting the job done. Google tried to do this with first taking Java and compiling it to JavaScript, and then when that failed, they moved over to a new language they called Dart. And Microsoft created a competing language called TypeScript. The difference between Dart and TypeScript is that Dart is an entirely new language, and it compiles to JavaScript, whereas TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. So it looks syntactically very similar. So if you are a JavaScript developer, it's much easier to just go to TypeScript and you get guaranteed compatibility there. In Dart, it's a different language entirely. I actually like Dart. I think it's phenomenal, and it just didn't get any traction or adoption. And there's a lot of phases in these transpiled languages in the JavaScript world. There was CoffeeScript, and that was really popular for a long time. And I thought there was a lot of cool things in CoffeeScript. It was like Ruby had sex with JavaScript. A one-night stand in a dark hotel room, and 9 months later you have CoffeeScript, and it's a Frankenstein child. We're just going to have to make it work. And then you had more academic projects that came in, like saying, hey, let's start with a proper programming language like Java, and then get it into JavaScript. But it's much better, I think, just to go with JavaScript, move into TypeScript, and those two things will get you where you need to go. And then there's all these frameworks like React and Angular and so forth. And you have to learn a testing framework too, like Selenium. So there's lots of things to learn there. Book recommendation of the month. I actually have a book to recommend, and the name escapes me. So I will tweet it at the back end of this because I just got the book. It's on synesthesia. I like Go now. You're not alone. A lot of people like Go. I've never been a fan myself, but a lot of people like it. PS5 or Xbox? Xbox. This was actually done. There was a movie where Chuck Norris fought Bruce Lee. I think it was Enter the Dragon. I'll have to look it up. But Chuck Norris would kick Bruce Lee's ass because he has all the skill and he's twice his size. Kraken or Avanti, I love Caitlin Long, and I think she's an amazing person. But I won't pick a side on this one. Both Kraken and Avanti are great organizations, and they are both safe to use. What do you think of Fabric? I got some right here. See? Yeah, it's great. Fabric has changed the human race. I watched the 1997 Macworld with Bill Gates after you mentioned it in an interview. It was hilarious. Yes, giant Bill Gates, tiny Steve Jobs. But it shows you guys what good CEOs do for their companies. This doesn't matter because once you get to the same skill set, you have the law of diminishing returns. So if you have, let's some guy who's like a really good black belt, and then he trains another person for 10 years, and that other person learns quickly, that person who has 10 years of training has a real good shot at beating that other person who's been training for 30 years or 40 years because you're just maintaining skills at a certain point or exploring new things at a certain point. But remember, if you have an age advantage on someone, yeah. And also, Norris was trained in many forms. Lee's form was very flashy, but it wasn't particularly appealing for fighting. Don't get me started on this. The Bruce Lee thing. I'm not even going to go down that road. I'm going to save that for Joe Rogan. Yeah, this was another fun one. Bill Gates got a pie in the face. Many of you kids are too young to remember this. It happened in the late 1990s in Europe. So if you Google Bill Gates pie in face, a person was just waiting. Bill Gates was entering a building and somebody went pie in face, and he had pie all over his face. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Bruce Lee is a legend. That's true. It's a shame he didn't live longer. His chair jumping skills are on point. Yeah, Bill Gates could jump over a chair like mine. He could jump over it. And he would actually show this off as a skill in many interviews he would do. Let's see here. Joe would grill you. Yeah. That's how you get Joe really fired up, involved. You got to troll him a little bit. It's got to be a really fun interview. Have you heard from the molten tar monster, dude? No. After Shelly and we're really growing and things are looking good, suddenly people got silent. What a surprise. And when smart contracts come and multi-asset comes and all these other things, it'll get really quiet. And the transaction volume will keep going up. All these projects will keep being built and get even more quiet. The silence is deafening. Tell him weed is addictive and he'll lose his shit. Oh, that's great. We built Voltaire in Rust. Rust is a great language. Make sure to grab some elk meat. I'll just show up and be like with an anti-weed shirt while being vegan, saying MMA should be banned because it causes brain damage and DMT is a scam. Oh man, that would be so much fun. And do you think Joe lasts at Spotify over under 6 months? If they try to censor him, he'll go. He has to, or else he'll lose all his money. But he just bought a $14.4 million home in Austin, Texas. So I think he might need some of that Spotify money. So if I had to guess, I think he's going to stay on Spotify. And it's going to turn into kind of an XM radio, Howard Stern type deal. Thank you for the Gates chair reference. I'm posting it to all my social media accounts. Yeah, you guys absolutely need to make a meme out of that. Thoughts on Danny Brazilian using his public company's money to fund his lifestyle? This is what some of these guys do. I don't have a lot of respect for people who they say, look how rich I am, and look at all these beautiful women I have, and look at all the things I can buy. It's one thing to get successful and say, hey, I'm having this amazing success, especially when you share that success with other people. Like sometimes when you show people what it's really like being wealthy and what the lifestyle is like, it's not all as glamorous as people make it out to be. Like on Facebook, I posted a picture of my Lamborghini on the back of a tow truck. It's been towed 3 times in the last year I've owned it because of various little problems that it's had. So it's nice to show that stuff off and say, yeah, we're all people. Okay, I have more than most, but there's no difference with me versus you. And you should never believe that because you have money, it makes you special. We both breathe the same air. We both drink the same water. There's nothing special about people. But these people come along and then they become the asset. And then the problem is that they have to keep doing more and more and more of that, almost like the Instagram models and these things. And then they have to look for even more crazy ways of differentiating themselves with this wealth and power. And then they go into that spiral. And usually what ends up happening is they start committing crimes because they run out of resources to be able to do it from their own accord. It's called a grandiosity gap. So I don't have a lot of respect for people who do that. I'm like, what's the guy accomplished? What's he done? What's he built? If you look to Musk, you can say, well, I look all around Boulder and I see tons of the fucking cars. And this guy wasn't born, these Teslas wouldn't be here. I watched those rockets landing on the pad and the astronauts going to the space station. I say, that is a real person. Society should reward that and give accolades to that. Being with beautiful women is not an accomplishment, nor is being able to afford expensive meals or these things. So anyway, it's just a difference of style and personality, I guess. Have you ever met Elon? Yes. This is a good one. I don't know. It's coming up. So we got to do something. I would have gone somewhere. It would have been a lot of fun. But yeah, unfortunately, the world is shut down. So we'll try to do something virtual. Celsius seems further ahead in development. How will Cardano compete with platforms like Celsius in terms of interoperability? They're adapt. How about they move over to Cardano? That sounds like a good plan. Let's find a way to make that happen. Is this your Saturday night, Charles? Yep, this is my Saturday night. And the mood is right. Oh, what a night. Damn, Charles. Hi, Charles. Late night surprise. Too much coffee today. Welcome, Dr. Lesser. We're going to change your last name to Dr. Lecter. Will you please wear 2 pens tucked in your collar when on Rogan? Yeah, so if many of you, if I don't have the front pocket because they're gradually phasing that out, I'll actually put the pen on my collar. So what you're asking me to do, Tommy Peters, is put my pens in my collar like that. Is that what you're asking me to do, Tommy Peters? To do that? I mean, it can be done, Tommy Peters. 2 pens in the collar. And then they'll call me 2 Pen Charles. Are these Lamy pens? You recognize them. Yes, they are. They are Lamy pens. I am a big fan of Lamy pens. And 2 Pen Charles is always a fan of those in the collar. All right. Lord of the Rings or Star Wars? Well, Star Wars under Kathleen Kennedy can just go fuck itself. So Lord of the Rings. We'll see what they do under Amazon. But the only The Mandalorian is good, and they're going to find a way to make it bad. They're trying so hard. You know, Jon Favreau's like, no, Disney, no, don't ruin it. Sunday morning here in Oz. Welcome, Oz. Australia is a beautiful place. Will Symphony of Blockchain ever be revived at some point? Yeah, one of these days. Rogue One was the only good new Star Wars movie. That's true. And they had to reshoot it. Oh my God, it was so much work. You know, here's what they need to do. If they hired me to redo Star Wars and they said, Charles, we need to save the franchise, Kathleen Kennedy's out, the very first thing I would do is I would make an R-rated standalone Vader movie. Just go do what they did with Logan, you know, an R-rated Wolverine movie. Go do that for Darth Vader. Okay. Then the only good asset that they have right now is The Mandalorian. So it's clear that these serials are very popular, and if they're done correctly, can help you build out your universe. So go do that, okay? And saturate for the next few years your entire baseline. And the comic book series that they've been pushing out are pretty reasonable. Then you have all this great content from the Old Republic. So go do a trilogy in the Old Republic and hire some decent writers for that. Not D&D from Game of Thrones. They should be flogged and hanged for what they did for season 7 and 8. But go hire some decent writers for the Old Republic and go do that. And there's tons of material for this. Then the other thing is pretend like the new trilogy that they just made never happened. And go remake episodes 7, 8, 9 and make them properly. Bring Mara Jade back and all these other things. And what you do is you use The Mandalorian and your other serials to push your way back into episode 7 and 8 and redo the whole thing. So decanonize these movies. They did it with The Incredible Hulk. They can do it here. Just pretend like those movies didn't exist. Boo-hoo to anybody who complains about it. And, you know, there's the Clone Wars people and all these other things. There's just a lot of great writers and a lot of great material that lives in that ecosystem. So that's what I would do, and it would be amazing. You guys would love it. And it will never happen because Star Wars is now woke wars, just like Star Trek. They killed Star Trek. Star Trek Discovery is a dumpster fire. Picard is a dumpster fire. I just don't understand why they take these amazing franchises and they just burn them to the ground. And then when you complain about it, you're a bad person. But that's just Charles Two-Pen Hoskinson's opinion. Don't forget the Fallen Order series. There's some good stuff in that pipeline. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. Oh, that's a good one. This one right here. Thoughts on Bethesda being bought out by Microsoft. Do you think it will light a fire under their asses and push for release dates on Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield? So I actually know some people at Bethesda, and Elder Scrolls 6, they have been working on very hard. They built a completely new graphics engine. It's a flagship game. So like when Skyrim came out, that was the foundation for the Fallout series. And a lot of their derivative franchises. And they're making a lot of money from the Elder Scrolls Online. And they have a lot of very profitable IP sources. So Bethesda's not in like a super rush to get anything out quickly. And generally with the Elder Scrolls series, these are kind of the next-gen technology. So they were waiting for PS5 and the new Xbox to propagate, and they're building basically Elder Scrolls 6 for that. In terms of its underlying technology, it's going to be using something equivalent to what you're seeing with Unreal 4. And it's just really amazing what they've been able to accomplish with it. And there's just all these new features and cool AI systems and other things. So there's a big team. And they're putting a lot of effort into it. Now, the Microsoft acquisition of Bethesda is interesting. Microsoft has a very poor track record of when they acquire a studio, basically just screwing the whole thing up. Whether they did a good job or not with Minecraft, they haven't really done much with that IP to show like a big improvement or acceleration. And they've destroyed a lot of other franchises like Lionhead Studios and these other things in their past. Fable was a dumpster fire after Fable 3. So if I had to guess, I think you would see no meaningful change in Bethesda today, and for Fallout, and for the new Fallouts that are coming, and for Elder Scrolls 6. I think you will see a significant change in Bethesda over the next 3 to 5 years in terms of how they pursue game development, the types of projects they work on, and how these projects are wired together. But not much today. And it's a shame. Bethesda was one of the good ones. It's a great studio. By the way, they were inspired to create the Elder Scrolls by my game, Legends of Valor. I can say it's my game now. Yeah. I didn't create it. I just bought it. What do you think of the recent Epic versus Apple fight? Epic gonna lose because Apple gonna Apple. Okay, this is how you should ask every question if you want an answer now. Hey, Two-Pen C. Does Legends of Valor have an ending? Not yet, but I did write one, but I'm not happy with the one I wrote. Do you like the Forgotten Realms? Forgotten Realms 3rd edition, great. Time of Troubles and post Time of Troubles, great. Forgotten Realms 4th edition, they destroyed everything that was ever good about that entire world. It was like taking this beautiful, beautiful child and then filling the tub up with scalding hot water and putting some insulating gloves on and strangling the child in the scalding hot tub. And then they let it live for a little bit, like in horrific pain and terrible burns over its body, and then put it back into the scalding water. I will never forgive Wizards of the Coast for what they did with 4th edition. I will never forgive them for what they did to Forgotten Realms. It had well over 20 years of lore and beautiful history and a beautiful game world, and they just threw it all away. They got rid of Chult. They killed the entire gods in the pantheon. They destroyed the whole magic system. It was horrible what they did. Absolutely horrible and unforgivable. And those people should be quartered out and shot. So I never looked back. I went total Pathfinder, and I've never looked back since. They've lost me for life. But pre-4th edition, beautiful, absolutely great game world. I grew up on the gold box games, 2nd edition and 1st edition. It's catching on already, right? Cool. Look, instead of popping your collar, you'll be 2-penning it. That's what 2-pen C does, yo. There we go. No way you'll top the Alex Jones episode. We're going to go 5 hours, and then Spotify editorial control will edit it down to 30 minutes, and then it'll just have like this fact-checking thing next to me, and they'll say how horrible Charles is. Georgia, the country of Georgia. Done deal. Where did the eagle land? The eagle has landed in the office. Looks really good there, actually. It was a lot smaller than I thought. It came in a huge crate. So I was like, oh, no, I don't have room for this. But when we opened the crate outside, we were able to get it up the elevator. So it's in the office. Hard to wingsuit at 230 pounds. You're damn right. I need to lose some weight and strengthen up. Yeah. Red pen or blue pen? Oh, that's awesome. I can take them out and be like, write with the red pen. Write with the blue pen. Oh, I didn't even think about it. Yeah, I love this. This is great. Thoughts on crypto finally? Rachel Siegel. Yeah, I like her a lot. She has a good little show and good marketing shtick. She makes very good money with that marketing shtick, and she's actually very bright. No. They're about done. You know, the growing season's over. I'm just about to harvest the pumpkins. Oh, I got to answer this one. Up here, Bigfoot, a little bit higher than that. Do you like the band Tool? To me, Tool sounds like garbage cans having sex. I do not like them. I don't like Dodge Rams, and I will not eat green eggs and ham. Did I miss the Georgia news? When did this happen? The prime minister of the country wrote about us, but we're not relevant for Wikipedia. Would you ever publicly debate Vitalik? What's the point of that? I'd rather do productive things. Right now, for the InfoSec folk, the best thing you can do is participate in Idea Scale and in the discussions around Voltaire and the DC fund. A huge amount of these ideas are going to require a security dimension. It's a good way to get some business, make some money, and really help people out. I think that's the best way you guys can participate. Security mindset is very hard to come by. Oop, wrong one. No, I don't want to do that one either. Where was it? Where was it? Here we go. Been asking this question for a while. What is your history and relationship with Andreas and Antonopoulos? I've known of Andreas for well over 7 years, and I occasionally go on his show, Let's Talk Bitcoin, and we've run into each other quite a few times throughout the years. He's a great communicator and a good educator and one of the good guys in the space. Your thought on wood price skyrocketing? I should have been a lumberjack. I got an update on that from the lab. Not ready to talk about it yet. What was the question, Stacy? What was the question? I was scrolling through. I'm doing this by hand on a touch screen. Touchy screenies. Who is the smartest guy in the blockchain industry? You know, Alex Cherpinoy is probably one of the smartest guys in the industry. He knows a little bit of everything. He can do everything. Academically, probably the strongest guy is Silvio Macaulay, because I mean, he's like got the Nobel Prize of Computer Science and built half of the stuff in our industry. And he's an exceedingly smart guy, and he's hired a lot of very bright people. Pramod Viswanas is probably another one of the smartest people in the industry, as is our chief scientist, Agalos Karasis. He's an extremely good guy. Duncan is probably the best engineer in the industry. But there's a lot of really good people. This industry tends to be a beacon to attract brilliant people. Greg Maxwell is also incredibly smart. Toxic person, but very smart and very talented. And you'll never get any brownie points for ever trying to collaborate with him if you're either with him or against him. Yeah, there's some really good people. Smartest person I ever met was Terrence Tao. There are few people in life that can ever achieve that level of thought. Have you ever talked with Gavin Wood about Cardano? Oh, yes. He is well more than aware of what we do, and we rub shoulders every now and then. You asked, I answered. I don't believe anyone wants to see 40 Iohk stake pools. So will Iohk stake the smaller pools when K increases? Well, I don't know. Maybe people do want to see them. Maybe they don't want to see them. You don't want to see them. I don't know. Yeah, we'd love to do some community delegation when partial delegation is enabled and delegation portfolios is enabled. It'll make that a lot easier conversation. My problem is that who do I pick? If I pick Bob and not Alice, Alice hates me. If I pick Alice, Bob hates me. So the very act of trying to help the ecosystem means I'm picking winners and losers. So I'd like to avoid that until I have a more impartial way of dealing with it. And whether we have 20 pools or 40 pools, does that particularly matter? No. We have 8% of the supply. So of course we're going to have a few pools. Come up with a different consensus mechanism if you think plutocratic consensus is not fair. I care a lot about the system surviving. I have vested interest in that respect. Are you a Fed? No. This is an interesting one. Favorite NFL team? Gripman, Colorado. The Denver Broncos were. But, I have not watched a game of football in a few years. Last game, I think it was one of the Super Bowls. I just don't care about the NFL anymore. The NFL did the same thing that Kathleen Kennedy did to me with Star Wars. I used to love Star Wars. I was a huge Star Wars fan. I got very excited about it. After The Last Jedi, I just became apathetic. I didn't care. When Rise of the Skywalker came out, I said, I guess I'll see it. But there was no passion there anymore. And after what's recently happened with the NFL, the last few years with all the politics and these things, I just don't care anymore about the NFL. I just don't even think about it. I used to know who was in the draft, if they were first round or second round, the difference between Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning, blast from the past. And I knew everybody's quarterback rating. And what was so nice about football was that it was the ultimate opener in the United States in particular for having conversations with people. You'd be at the airport at the bar, you'd sit next to some guy, and you could just be like, if you're in Seattle, how about those Seahawks? They'd have an opinion about it. It was nice. It really was, to be able to have that opener, and you'd be able to speak about football for a few minutes, and then you could pivot to something else, but at least you can build rapport and camaraderie with people. And now it's just a dead sport to me. I just don't care. I don't care who wins. Don't care about the Broncos. I don't even know who the quarterback the Denver Broncos are. I don't even know who the head coach is. It's pretty crazy. And every year they're getting less and less ratings and audience, and it is what it is. So on to other sports. And it's sad too, because it was something I truly enjoyed, and my dad truly enjoyed, and it was a way for my father and I to keep a thread together. And I lost that because of all these things. And apparently I'm the problem because of that. That's what I'm told. Thoughts on a restaurant utilizing the Cardano blockchain? Be pretty cool for food safety. It's one of those downstream consumers of things that have already been blockchained. So it's entirely possible that the restaurant of the future, when you get your food, you can basically scan a QR code or something like that It's programmed to the table, and you can actually see the entire history of all the ingredients and where they came from and the people who worked on them. So, this is the magic of when you start getting creative and you think about where is the world going and where do these technologies go? And something as simple as, well, what can a restaurant do with this? You suddenly can create a whole ecosystem around telling stories about the things that the people are consuming. And it works both ways. Customers as well as the providers, you can know about famous people who worked at the restaurant, famous people who have eaten at the restaurant. You got all these beautiful check-in systems for them. A great example is when I was at CU Boulder, I used to eat at this restaurant nearby CU Boulder called The Sink. It's a very old pizzeria, very famous one. And the ceiling of The Sink has all these beautiful hand-drawn pictures and text and signatures and things like that. And they have these nice murals on the side of the restaurant, tell the story of it. Well, Robert Redford was the janitor there way back in the day, like the 1960s or 50s or something like that. And I just had so much fun always going there, and there was so much history that was there. And a lot of older restaurants, like the other day I ate at the Buckhorn Exchange. It started in 1893. It's the oldest restaurant in Denver. The owner of that restaurant was good friends with Teddy Roosevelt. And when they'd go hunting, he actually would get all the animals taxidermied. He'd drag them back to his restaurant. So if you go to the Buckhorn Exchange, you will actually see the hundreds and hundreds of various animals that he hunted, from bears to skunks to wolverines and exotic birds and all these other things, alongside all the guns of the time. So they have cavalry rifles from the 1890s and these things. And the restaurant has so much history. 8 U.S. presidents have eaten there. Both the Apollo and the Gemini astronauts have eaten there. Great sports stars, governors, entertainers like Johnny Carson, Vanna White. It's a pretty eclectic place. And they tell you that because that's their shtick. But it'd be nice to actually have a system that lets you know these things on the customer side and also the employee side, along with the food and everything else. The point is, it's your imagination as an architect. And if I've done my job right, it's easy to build these things. And you can learn quickly from those who have built these things and pull these things into your business, and they scale very rapidly. That's the magic of great platforms. When cell phones came out, smartphones came out, and they had the App Store, then suddenly it was so easy to build all these experiences that previously would cost millions to billions of dollars or be just physically impossible. And you could make assumptions about your customers that you could never make before. For example, when you look at this pandemic, a lot of the times when I go to eat and I scan a menu with a QR code, they won't give you a paper menu. They actually just assume you have a cell phone, and a cell phone that's internet connected, and a cell phone that can scan a QR code and pull up a menu from their website. That would be an insane assumption, even just 10 years ago. But today, it's a reasonable one to make for most restaurants. So answering your question, I think if I've done my job right, there's a great foundation to innovate on, and that innovation will allow you to be creative in trying to make your business more appealing, whether it be telling the story of the customers who have eaten there, whether they be famous people like presidents or infamous people like Ted Kaczynski, or they be great employees who went on to go do incredible things, like the Robert Redford story, for example, or the story of the food or the people who prepared the food, where the food came from, better ways of tipping, more interesting ways of tipping. So, the sky's the limit for this type of stuff. Anyway, that's a good way to end it. And so there's a good one from Dan Best. Charles, thoughts on Russell J. Gould and correct parse syntax grammar? Sorry, Dan, that's for a different time. That was a good way to end it, though. Thanks, everybody. 3 hours today, 2 hours, 39 minutes, and 58 seconds. I'm going to go get some sleep. Charles 2 Penn Hoskinson, tired.